Last week, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, white nationalists, and KKK members held a Unite the Right rally in Charlotte.
And if you continue to watch this video, you will soon find out that's probably the smartest thing that Riley says in this whole thing, because in this case, yeah, that happened. But of course, you know he's going to somehow make this about, how, the alt-left is totally innocent and wasn't violent at all. But I think I'll let Riley pigeonhole his own arguments.
Immediately afterwards, Trump failed to condemn the Nazis by name. Instead, he blamed the violence on many sides. And I've seen a lot of people echoing that sentiment. When you talk about the murder of Heather Heyer, someone pops up and says, what about the violence that Black Lives Matter and anti-fascists have caused? But the problem with that is that it's drawing a false equivalent.
Oh, where do I even start here? First off, yes, there was violence on both sides, and Trump called out violence on both sides. I already covered that before, so I don't see a reason to cover it again. But the false equivalence thing, Riley, violence is violence. Yes, there are different forms of violence. Technically, rape is violence, and murder is violence, and rape and murder are different. I'm not going to argue that fact at all, anytime. But Riley goes on to say that, Nazis at their core are violent. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but so is Antifa. And when you say that this kind of that white supremacist mentality gets black people killed, I'm not gonna argue with you that if they were given the opportunity, they probably would. What I'm gonna argue with you is whether or not that you could say that that's specifically just Nazis, because because Antifa is notorious for being violent. Hell, almost every week you see a story about them beating up some reporter or some Trump supporter simply for having a different ideology than you. Communism and fascism, they're the same. The only way that they can get their kind of mentality pushed upon other people is through violence and intimidation. But you won't admit to that simply because you don't want to believe that there is such a thing as the violent left, but you are more than happy to point out the violent right. The thing that bugs me is that you get upset when people point out the violent left and you say that they're defending Nazis. No, they're not going, hey, the alt-left is dangerous, but Nazis are all right. No, they're just saying, hey, look, the alt-left is dangerous, but hey, look, the alt-right is dangerous too. You can't point out both without picking a side, But I guess I should be, not expecting a whole lot of mental capacity from somebody given your history. So, and let me tell you about another ideology that gets people killed. The ideology that any person that thinks outside of the way that you think is dangerous and is a Nazi and therefore must be stopped. You see, I don't have no problem calling out people that are actual white supremacists. My issue with you is that you view anybody that is even slightly right of the far left to be a Nazi. Oh, if you're a libertarian, a centrist, God forbid if you're a centrist to these kinds of people, or if you're just a regular, everyday, cut-of-the-mill Republican or conservative. Yep, all those people, to you, are Nazis. I hate to break it to you, but you don't make a good case for yourself, given your past history.
And harms people of color. Black Lives Matter, on the other hand, is an organization that states very specifically that its goals are to end violence and discrimination against black people. Their official website says, Black Lives Matter is working for a world where black lives are no longer systematically and intentionally targeted for demise. That is completely antithetical to the purpose of white supremacists. They are not two sides of the same coin. Nazis believe in white superiority and in the eradication of people of color. Black Lives Matter believes in black people being treated fairly and equally in society.
Right, I don't know if you are aware of what the phrase, two sides of the same coin actually means. Because while, at the core Black Lives Matter seems like a good movement, with the intention of equalizing rights between blacks and whites, which they already have, and in the law. And yeah, I'm well aware of the fact that there's a problem with, especially in the United States, our police forces and all that. But that aside, you said that their website says that that's their entire goal. But here's the problem: what they say and what they do tend to be different. Like the amount of Black Lives Matter movements that have become violent is exceptionally high. Much in the same way that Antifa, majority of their protests end up becoming violent. Now, with that being said, you are right that, the Black Lives Matter movement wanting to equalize the rights between blacks and whites is antithetical to white supremacy. I'm not going to argue with you on that, and that's one of those cases where you're right. But, and this is a huge but, they are two sides of the same coin because both of them want a thing, and they go about violence to achieve it. Now, in the case of Black Lives Matter, you will find, and I'm fairly certain that if you do a little digging, you'll find a couple of the head members of Black Lives Matter are black supremacists. Black supremacy and white supremacy are, by definition, two sides of the same coin because they both want supremacy for one race. It just so happens that one's for white supremacy and one's for black supremacy. Now, the reason why I think you have such a hard time seeing that is because you don't want to view the violent acts that Black Lives Matter is attached to as, representing their entire movement. However, you are more than happy to look at the Unite the Right and take those group of people and say, oh, see, these are the Trump supporters that we are looking for. These are the Trump supporters we were talking about, these racist, homophobic, and you name the buzzword, I'm sure it would probably be used. But that's the problem. Black Lives Matter doesn't represent all black people, much in the same regard that the Unite the Right rally doesn't represent all of the right. Hell, Trump even himself denounces them. But that's the reason why people have such a hate boner for you, is because you can't see both sides. You only see one side as evil. Anyway, moving on.
Matter fights for. And in regards to anti-fascists, they're harder to pin down because they're not an organization with leaders like Black Lives Matter. But I will say this, violence against fascists is not the same as violence used by fascists. Anti-fascism is not fascism.
This is one of those awkward moments, Riley, because Antifa does have somewhat of an organization going on. They are somewhat organized. They do have leaders, and if you looked outside of your bubble, you'd probably see that. I mean, it's not that difficult to see on Twitter, or if you look through news articles, or they even probably have a Facebook page if you look hard enough. Hell, it's probably not even that difficult to find. But the fact of the matter is, since you think that they're quote-unquote unorganized, is laughable, because it's very clear that they are. Also leads me to believe that this is what a lot of the mentality stems from, that you go on to say, that leads to you going on and saying that violence done by anti-fascists is different than violence done by fascists. Yes, people that fought Nazis during World War II, a lot of people would say that we were on the right side. Yes, but like I've said in a video before, this isn't a war that we're dealing with. These are two fringe groups, and I hate to say it, but Antifa can call themselves anti-fascists until they're blue in the face. It doesn't change the fact that they act like fascists. If you beat up somebody with a weapon simply for having a different opinion than you, or because you have rose-colored glasses on, you see Nazis everywhere, you're a fascist. You're acting like a fascist, and the only thing that your name does is make the rest of us that are laughing at you laugh even more because of the irony of the situation. So yes, Riley, there is a difference between fascists and anti-fascists. However, Antifa are not fucking anti-fascists. They are fascists. It just so happens they have a pretty little name that they can hide behind whenever people point it out. Like, oh no, they're not anti-fascists. They're not fascists. Their name says they're anti-fascists, for Christ's sake, crying out loud. Well, and using that logic, I'm gonna ask a question in the audience. If I go out and I say I'm not a murderer, and then I murder somebody, does that change the fact? Does that mean me not a murderer simply because I say that I'm not a murderer? No, it doesn't. So try another one.
If someone pulls a gun on you, you can feel justified fighting back. But on a large-scale societal level, that violence against you can be as simple as calling for your eradication. You can argue all day that words are not violence, but the Holocaust didn't pop up out of nowhere. It started with words. It started with the vilification of certain marginalized groups, and then it grew. The marketplace of ideas has already proven that it can fail spectacularly. If you let people preach their genocidal bullshit as if it's normal and acceptable, they will grow. The people of Nazi Germany who let the Holocaust happen were not inherently more bigoted than any Americans are today. They were just swayed by convincing rhetoric. People today still have the ability to be swayed by fascist rhetoric, and that leads to mass violence. So in terms of large-scale societal violence, fighting fascism is self-defense. It is violence, but it is violence meant to protect marginalized people. Committing violence against someone because they are black or Jewish or Muslim or Mexican or trans or gay or whatever, that is unacceptable and prejudiced. But committing violence against someone to stop them from committing violence against a marginalized group, that's justified. There may be...
Oh, you're right, really. The Holocaust didn't pop up out of nowhere. And yeah, it was partly due to words, but that wasn't the only reason. There was a lot more nuance behind it than simply just Hitler came out one day and is like, death to the Jews, and everybody rallied behind him. No, there was more nuance to that entire historical situation than simply that. One of them being the economic issues that were going on in Germany due to World War I. Germany at that time was in such a situation where a wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks wouldn't buy you a loaf of bread. That is not the same situation in the United States, and it gives you no room whatsoever to deny people their freedom of speech. Now, the minute that they go out and they actually try to act upon these actions, that's when action should be taken against them. That is how self-defense works. If somebody's walking up to you on the street who happens to have a pistol in their hand, you can't just, not necessarily in their hand, but on their, let's say for the sake of argument, on their hip, you just can't beat the shit out of that person. And then when the cops show up, you'll be like, oh, well, he had a gun and I thought he was going to shoot me. That's not how self-defense works. You have to be put in a dire situation where you have no other choice but to defend yourself. And we're not at that point. Nor will we be at that point if ideas prevail. And ideas won't prevail if they're not allowed to be brought forward. And they can't prevail against these other ideas unless these other ideas are allowed to come to light, to be defeated. And I know that's difficult for you to understand, but you really need to understand that that's how that is supposed to work. Otherwise, you end up with a situation like Antifa and the alt-right. But, I don't know. I guess I'm just looking at this thing from an optimist point of view. And another thing I'd like to ask you is, what is your definition of violence? Because, no, words are not violence. Sure, there are certain words you're not allowed to say in certain situations. Like, you can't yell fire in a theater. But the reasoning behind that is that, it causes mass hysteria. While I disagree with what the Unite the Right was saying, on Friday night, they weren't being violent. So it's totally fine. It's called freedom of fucking peaceful assembly. I know where you're coming from and saying, well, we gotta stop them before they do something. Which, yeah, I get where you're coming from. It doesn't mean I agree with you. They already aren't doing anything. The fact of the matter is if one group comes in and starts immediately shutting down everything that they're saying, not only are their ideas not allowed to be heard, but also it tears down fundamental rights of people that we already accept to be allowed on a regular basis within the borders of most Western civilized countries. And once you start chipping away at that, it's very easy to take it away from people that aren't necessarily doing anything nefarious. Using your logic and bending what the definition of violence is a very slippery slope. And if you find yourself on that slippery slope, you're going to come to a position, like I said before, with Antifa. And also, on top of that, when you mentioned that when you mentioned the groups having violence done against them, I noticed that you didn't mention anything about Republicans or libertarians or centrists, because these are the people that are getting, and in some cases actually just simply liberals, classical liberals, that are getting targeted by Antifa as Nazis. So while your idea might be pure, one of the very many problems is that you're pointing it not only at the wrong people, the other part of your problem being that you're willing to take action before any action was already taken. And no, walking down the street in a protest, saying blood and soil, while yes, that is an action in and of itself, it is not an act of violence. The words may be disgusting and vile and rotten, and I disagree with them in every way, shape, or form, but I don't think that those people should be shut down any more than the people that march and want communism. Why? Because I know full well that the minute you try shutting down either of those two groups, they're going to use it as an affront and an ability to grow their numbers. which, in case you are unaware, is the reason why the alt-right is growing, is because you are telling people to shut up, listen to me, I'm smarter than you, I'm morally better than you, and therefore, you need to listen to me and not have your own say. And also the things that you're saying are racist and homophobic and Nazis and you name the fucking buzzword, it would probably be used in that situation. Now, part of the reason why a lot of people despise you, Riley, is because you don't understand the concept of two sides, nuance, and understanding. You simply look at somebody, anybody that criticizes you is instantly a bigoted Nazi homophobe. You make that assumption right off the bat, then you're giving the person that the person that has an issue with you all the more reason to loathe you. Now, with that being said, I'm going to finish this video off with a much more lighter tone. And this is my second response video, and quite frankly, I feel like I'm getting a little bit better at using this software, so we'll see what happens in the future. However, this will be out probably Tuesday on my regular channel, YouTube channel. However, I'm putting it out probably tomorrow, Sunday, on my VidMe channel. So, everybody out there, have a good morning, afternoon, evening, and or night, and I will see you later.